It's my pleasure and honor to be here with Rabbi David Jaffe, who is the founder of the Kirva Institute, which is doing wonderful work, consulting and teaching primarily to ensure that Jewish institutions can include Musar and spirituality that's interconnected with their social justice work as well. So check out the Kirva Institute, and he's the author of this wonderful new book published by Trumpeter, Changing the World from the Inside Out, a Jewish approach to personal and social change. Rabbi Jaffe is a dear friend and teacher of mine. It's an honor to ask him a few questions at this important time in American history. So firstly, one of your areas of expertise is in the Breslov movement and Rabbi Nachman, and how that also informs our social activism. Can you share a little bit about who Rabbi Nachman was and what the Breslov movement was and is today?
Sure, Shmuly. And I would just say, just to back up a minute, I came to Breslov. I feel like, this moment in our history where there's so much to do, so much to take on as far as making the society that really honors dignity and we want to do, is really a long-term process. And we need the spiritual resources that we have at our disposal as Jews to inform us, to support us, and to bring that wisdom into this work. Chassidut, or the Hasidic movement, which is a Jewish revival movement from the middle of the 18th century, is one of those resources we could bring. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Rabbi Nachman was one of the early Hasidic teachers, and he had dealt with a lot of adversity during his life and a lot of other groups that really were attacking him, and he developed a spirituality that enabled his followers to tap into their deep passion and their what we call ratzon, we call desire, motivation for serving God and for being the best people they could be. He also emphasized joy and being able to find little points in your life that really gave you joy for renewal, to be able to really keep doing your work in the world. So his whole path really resonates a lot, I think, for people today, because also at the dawn of the Enlightenment, he was really talking about the importance of your subjectivity and your individual life as a way of getting close to God, a way of living a really powerful spiritual life, but based in who you are individually and not kind of giving up on that. And I think that really resonates for people today.
Yeah. So a lot of American progressives, and really even beyond progressives, are very afraid today in America. A deep sense of despair that we were moving forward as a society for human dignity, for justice, and that we've had a major setback, which may be irreparable in many ways. And I wonder, how might Breslov teachings, Rabbi Nachman teachings, give a sense of hope or give a sense of inspiration for social activists to recover and move forward?
Right. Okay, I think that's Breslov has a lot to teach around that, particularly around despair. Rabbi Nachman was famous for saying that there is no such thing as despair in the world. So what did he mean by that? He meant that if things happen in life that are very hard and cause suffering, and there's something in Hebrew we call shivron lev, or a broken heart, or pain. And when hard things happen in life, it's important we feel that pain and we don't just push off it and don't feel it. But he said that you should be very careful not to fall from that experience of brokenheartedness in the face of things, which a lot of people are feeling right now, into what he called despair, which is when you really feel like nothing is ever going to change and you're stuck. And so his main teaching around that was to cultivate simcha, to cultivate joy, and doing that by really looking for good points in life, finding where there was something positive, and in your own life or in other people, and always finding those places that then could shake you out of what you might feel like things are never changing. And that was a practice that he told his followers really to work on every day, to be finding these good points no matter what was going on. And things were very hard in his time. And again, his followers suffered a lot of attacks by other Hasidim and by the Russians, by the Ukrainians, and had a lot of hard times. And this was their practice for not falling into despair, for knowing, because what is despair? Despair is when you think nothing is ever going to change. And we're in a situation right now where it could feel like that. Like, as you said, things might be irreparable. But we know that, no, if you can find those good points, it shakes things up and gives you a sense of hope that things will change. And it's a practice, but it's a real practice to do that.
Yeah, beautiful. So, in community organizing, we talk a lot about celebrating wins. And it feels like we have to kind of raise the bar on those celebrations a little bit, celebrating who we're working with, celebrating our community, and celebrating whatever types of wins we can get for human dignity and justice.
Absolutely. I mean, you see it now, even just in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The people are rising up. People are, I'm seeing people and getting in touch with me. They want to do something. These people have never been active before in their life.
Yes.
And you're seeing this spark in them. So there's a lot to see.
Yeah. So maybe you can share an example of how this has been effective for you in your own work, in your own life.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, at that time, particularly, it was real adversity, and when I was able to use this practice, a good point to practice. This is back during the second Intifada. I was living in Jerusalem. It was when I was getting my ordination, and I was helping there's a particular form of peer counseling that I know very well, and I was helping Palestinians develop it in the Bethlehem area. And there were a couple of women particularly I was working with. And when the Intifada started, this class could not go on anymore because of the fighting. But we stayed in touch, these women. Eventually, after a couple of years, the fighting was more and more intense. We couldn't even get together anymore. So we could just be together on the phone. And after a while, one of these women stopped answering my calls, Mary. And I knew she was probably really angry, about a lot that was going on. And it was hard going on also on the Jewish side too. Yeah. But things were really, really bad over in Bethlehem. And I really felt like giving up a lot of times. I would call, I knew she was seeing my calls and not answering them. And this went on for about 6 months. And what enabled me to keep calling was I was looking for the good point of, okay, what is the good point here in myself and in her? And I kept coming to the relationship that she and I had really gone very far and into some danger to really stay connected with each other as colleagues. And every time I could remember that, how much I was committed to the relationship, it was like a good point. It would wake me up and would give me more power to keep and more strength to keep calling. So finally I figured out, okay, I'm going to call her Dad and try to catch her off guard. Yeah. And I did. And Dad answered the phone. I said, David, you talk to Mary. He put her on the phone. She didn't know it was me. Then she heard it was me. And she was angry. She was really angry. And I said to her, Mary, I'm never going to give up on you. I'm never going to give up on this relationship, no matter what's going on out there in the world. And she started crying. And that broke through. And we were able to keep going. Wow. But it was only because I was finding those good points and reminding myself of this relationship that would kind of give me that energy. And give me that joy in the face of all the anger and all the violence. I was able to keep going.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talked about focusing on the positive to get there. I think sometimes for me, focusing on the negative has also enabled me to persevere. I think of, some of my work in ethical kashrut, going from restaurant to restaurant to try to ensure these kosher establishments are paying their workers properly. Mm-hmm. And I think of certain workers I had met who were just really abused in the workplace. And as tired as I got running from place to place and getting rejected, I think of their stories in my head. Yeah. But that's harder to sustain. So I think there's a lot of wisdom to that, to holding the successes in our heads.
Yeah, that's what you describe is very important, and I think that's a different practice, and it's not so much a Breslov practice, but we have a practice called the Bechir, the choice point. Yeah, and where we try to get ourselves to enough awareness, or ourselves or other people, where there's enough awareness of something that then's going to say, okay, I have a choice here. So the way I'm seeing that is, you hear this story of abuse, and it gets you so angry, and you're realizing, okay, like I have a choice. I can either walk away from this, or like I'm gonna stay in this and do it. Yeah. So I think that kind of thing could be really helpful for that choice point. But they're both needed.
It's beautiful, because I think one of the main challenges we have today is really sticking with it, and that sense of I'm not walking away from you. Right. How many people need to hear that today? Right. My last question for you is those who want to start a spiritual practice, those who want some tips or tools on how to take these abstract ideas you suggested and start working on them daily. What kind of tips would you give for that?
Yeah. Well, these are very practical practices, and they really are something you can integrate in your life. First of all, I'd say my book does this, so I recommend Changing the World from the Inside Out. I lay out the practices, and there's practical, questions, things you can do. So that's one thing. I think the school of Musar, which is another big area of mine, is also very practical, and I think people can find that looking online. There's access to that where you're working on your character traits, and again, with very simple practices around journaling and around some meditations and things like that. So those are access and things are out there. I would say definitely look at my book, and also I would say check out the Musar resources.
Great. So check out Rabbi David Jaffe. Invite him to your community or organization, changing the world from the inside out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shmuly.